The English rock band going by the name Pink Floyd released their critically acclaimed body of work called The Dark Side of the Moon, an album sporting this iconic cover you've probably seen before on March 1st, 1973, which was the inspiration for this video's thumbnail. On October 4th, 2024, well-known astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson uploaded a YouTube short lightheartedly implying how this album was to blame for the misconception of there being a dark side on the moon, as well as briefly breaking down what's actually going on over there. And although Pink Floyd probably did unintentionally contribute to the spread of this false notion to some extent, it's not quite the full picture, and in today's video, I'd like to explore this mix-up as well as what's actually going on with the supposed dark side of the moon. For starters, I think we should talk about what this phrase, the dark side, even means, and I think a perfect way of explaining it is by taking a look at some video titles and thumbnails from the horror community on YouTube, specifically Nexpo's video, The Dark Side of Reddit, and immediately upon seeing the video's title and thumbnail, to me there's something obscure, not obvious at a surface level glance, and perhaps sinister and hidden in darkness being implied here, as well as something creepy and unnerving, shrouded in mystery on Reddit, a site that's well known to millions of people. One of the main appeals of a video like this is the fact that it piques our curiosity, as upon seeing a title and thumbnail like this, the question as to what this dark side of Reddit could possibly be arises, and ultimately people engage with the content, including myself. Circling back to the topic at hand, I think some of the reasons people are drawn to Nexpo's video are the same reasons why people are sort of fascinated by this idea of there being a dark side on the moon, this big old rock that millions of people see in the sky every night having some sort of aspect that's shrouded in mystery, hidden from plain sight, that could potentially be unnerving or sinister, is kind of a cool thing to think about and makes for a pretty good conversation starter. For example, you ask somebody the question, what do you think is on the dark side of the moon? And they respond with something like, I don't know, Peter Griffin lives there or something. Jokes aside, the reason I bring all of this up is because us normies weren't the only ones curious about what's on the other side of our moon, as according to the National Air and Space Museum's website on the topic, quote, for most of human history, we did not know what the far side of the moon looked like. It wasn't until 1959 when the Soviet Union launched the Luna 3 spacecraft that we got our first look at the far side. There's two things from this quote that I want to highlight at some point in this video. Of course, I'd like to touch on the launch of the Luna 3, but first I think we should talk about the two sides of the moon, as one of them is mentioned in the quote, that being the far side, which is the quote-unquote dark side of the moon that isn't ever visible to us from Earth. And before we dive deeper into the far side, let's talk about the side of the moon we're already familiar with. Whenever you look up at the night sky and take a glance at the moon, especially during a full moon, you'll notice consistently every night without fail that you're looking at the same side, the side that kind of looks like it has a face on it. This is what's known as the near side, and the reason we always see this side as opposed to the far side is due to the fact that, quote, Earth's moon rotates, but it takes precisely as long for the moon to spin on its axis as it does to complete its monthly orbit around Earth. As a result, the moon never turns its back to us. The reason this phenomenon exists is due to something called tidal locking, and I'd be lying if I said I completely understood this concept, so here's a little video from NASA's website that essentially demonstrates tidal locking in action, with the little face representing the near side of our moon, the side we always see. Just because we never see the far side of our moon from Earth, and just because whenever we do see the near side of our moon at night, especially during a full moon, it appears as though the other side is in complete darkness, doesn't necessarily mean it's always covered in darkness, as during certain moon phases, the far side ends up receiving just as much sunlight as the near side. And I now want to break down the different moon phases. As the quote from earlier implies, it takes about a month for the moon to complete its orbit around Earth, 27 days to be specific. And during that cycle, the moon is going to appear differently from phase to phase, and as a matter of fact, on some calendars, such as the one you're seeing in my footage right now, in the top right corner of some of the days, you'll notice tiny icons depicting different moon phases, and these give us an idea as to how the moon will appear on that day. For example, the month here is June. On the 11th, there was a full moon, and on the 18th, the moon was in its last quarter phase. At the time of writing, it's the 23rd, meaning that 2 days from now, on the 25th, there's going to be a new moon, the phase in which the quote-unquote dark side, or the far side of the moon, will receive just as much sunlight as the near side does during a full moon. Throughout a period of 29.5 days, the moon goes through a series of 8 phases. The aforementioned new moon phase, the waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, the full moon phase, waning gibbous, last quarter, waning crescent, and the cycle repeats itself once again, starting with a new moon, followed by all of the aforementioned phases. The reason I bring all of this up is for you to get an idea that through the various phases, the moon eventually ends up receiving sunlight on every side, technically meaning there's no such thing as a permanent dark side on our moon, because just as during a full moon, moon, the far side temporarily becomes the quote-unquote dark side. During a new moon, the opposite is true, as the near side, or the side always facing Earth, then temporarily becomes the quote-unquote dark side, since during this phase, the far side is completely illuminated by the sun. If you remember from the way beginning of this video, I quoted an article by the National Air and Space Museum saying how for most of human history, we were pretty much in the dark regarding how the far side of our moon looked like, and although to some degree we already understood concepts such as tidal locking, moon phases, and by extension how all the sides of the moon receive sunlight, it wasn't until the 1950s that, for the first time, we finally saw how the far side actually looked like, as on October 4th, 1959, a spacecraft called the Luna 3 was launched by the Soviet Union, and during its mission, it managed to take the following photo of the far side, which admittedly looks like it was taken on a DSi, but was nonetheless an important next step in learning more about our moon. In conclusion, you now know there's technically no such thing as a permanently dark side of the moon. However, there are permanently shadowed regions on the moon, or areas that never receive any sunlight. But anyways, I learned a lot through making this video, and I hope you learned something as well. And if you ended up enjoying this little video essay of mine, I hope you consider checking out some of my other videos on the channel. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Deuces.